Okay,
All
so
right. Yeah, no more sex jokes, Pete. So
What? No more
Yeah.
sex
Same.
jokes.
yeah. So this reminds me of the time that you tried to drill a hole in your head. You remember that? Drill a hole in your head. You remember that, Pete?
Vaguely.
Okay.
Self-trepanation is always sort of a
Yeah.
tricky procedure.
All right. To my live viewers, can you hear us and see us okay? I heard a little echo myself just now, but I don't hear it anymore, so that's good. All right, just to jog my memory, why are we here? What's going on here? Oh, right. Welcome to the Lovecraft eZine podcast. Thank you, everyone, for watching and or listening. Really appreciate it. I don't usually say things like this, but I've gotten some really nice comments lately about the friendliness of the eZine community, and
what said that?
it wasn't you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't expect it. The fans and followers, friends. Actually, our own Pete Rawlik said something like that on the phone to me the other day. So,
Did what?
and he's always, you may not remember it given your age, but you did say it.
Mike, it's not his age, it's his drinking. God.
That's true. Maybe it's a combination of both. 3 parts old age, 1 part liquor.
Yeah, well, there's something about liquor.
So,
giving more sex jokes.
Yes, guys, thanks for letting me know that our audio and video is good. Appreciate that. Our guest today is Matthew Lyons, and he is the author of a book called The Further Adventures of Batman. And wrong book. Wrong book.
You got it one.
That was last week. He's the author of a book called A Black and Endless Sky. And it is a very good, very immersive, terrifying book. It's a really good book.
Thanks for saying so, man.
And it came out about 1 month ago, didn't it?
Yep, March 15th. Right. The Ides of March, which is a super menacing pub date to be given by your publisher. It's a real scary one. It's like you spend your whole life being told to beware a thing, and then it's like, oh, hey, that's when your book's coming out. Oh, God.
Remember, Matt, all glory is fleeting. So,
that's true. I've heard that rumor.
Anyway, so we're going to talk to Matthew Lyons. We also have another Matt. So let's do introductions. You may know him from such movies as Big Ass Spider, and I don't know what else. But you want to introduce yourself, Matt?
Hey there, I'm Matt.
Matt Carpenter. You're Matt Carpenter today.
Yeah. I'm going to take just a moment to ask. If you didn't know Sam Gafford, he was a wonderful man. He died about 3 years ago.
Absolutely.
He was the one who gave me a chance to do some editing, and he also wrote some wonderful books. He was a noted Lovecraftian scholar, part of the 1980s scholarship group in Providence, and he was probably one of the most learned people about William Hope Hodgson on the planet. Well, he had this press called Ulthar Press, and I didn't know if they were going to fold when he died because he was the whole shop. But I think his wife still may be making money off of the books a little bit. So I would ask you to go to Amazon and look for the books by Ulthar Press. There's one, Providence Pals, which is his memoir of 1980s in Lovecraftiana. There are the two that I edited, A Lonely and Curious Country and Pickman's Gallery. They're just several books that look through. If you like one of the titles, pick one up. Know that you're supporting the surviving spouse of a very dear man.
Not just financially, but
just to keep his name alive.
That's hell. Yeah, to keep his name alive, and but also that's hell. When you lose someone that you love, and I know she's suffering. I don't know her very well, but we've exchanged a note or two, and just it's not only the monetary thing, but when she sees people buying Sam, her husband's books, that's going to hopefully lift her spirits, and that's a good thing too.
So
So
my next point on my introduction, telling you all about myself. The,
yeah,
the,
please do.
we have this prize this week. It's actually a book of scholarship by Robert Waugh. He was one of the alternative voices to Joshi in the original scholarship that was done about Lovecraft in the 80s. This was one of his first books by Hippocampus Press called Monster Voices. This is the 2011 edition. And it has some very nice essays in it. It's a substantial book. If you want to win it, send an email to ezineprizes@gmail.com and put monster in the subject heading. We'll draw a winner in about 6 weeks or so, and it could be you.
That's actually that's a great prize. That's
Yeah.
good. Well, they all are, but
Right.
yeah, obviously.
Right.
Rick, would you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Rick Lay, writer and pulp magazine collector.
Pete.
I'm Pete Rollick. I write really bad books, and I am a purveyor of fine filth.
Not sure why you say that. Actually, it's the other way around.
Purveyor of fine filth and a writer of bad books. Okay, sure.
No, it's you write great books and you watch crappy movies, so the rest of us don't have to.
Yeah, well, yes.
I mean, whomst among us?
Okay, so if you haven't heard it, please, whatever you do, do not watch Winter Beast. It is probably one of the worst movies ever made.
Okay, important safety tip from Pete Raleigh.
I'm intrigued now, of course.
Oh,
What-
yeah.
What is so bad
Yeah, that's
about
a
this?
bold claim.
So I think the first thing that you need to know is that it was probably made over the course of 4 or 5 years.
Red
So-
flag number one.
So there's this thing where if you watch the lead actor, his hair color changes and his mustache changes, and sometimes it's really thick and bushy, and sometimes it's pencil thin. And then the claymation special effects are, if you've ever seen the movie Equinox, these special effects make Equinox look like, I don't know,
Star Wars.
Star Wars, sure, yeah. The claymation special effects are just horrifically bad to the point that they're hilarious.
Maybe the mustache thing is some sort of supernatural thing going on.
Oh no! It's literally because they filmed it over several years.
No,
Yeah.
I know, but I'm just trying to help.
And the other thing is, it's like he'll run up to the car and he'll get in the car and his wardrobe will change because they did that scene 3 years ago, and
Well,
now that wardrobe is no longer around.
Well, he should be on America's Got Talent. You know, that wardrobe changer lady.
Yeah.
So
And then
yeah,
Mike
he
DeBronzo,
might have a whole new career.
Mike DeBronzo and I were talking, and we think
Oh,
that
that guy.
there were some scenes cut and rearranged so that the end of the movie was moved to the middle, and the middle of the movie was moved to the end. So that, anyway, it's just
Because why not?
well, because I think they again ran out of money, and they're like, nobody's going to watch this anyway, so we might as well just wrap it up in a ridiculous kind of fashion, and no one will notice. But
Pete Rollick noticed. God damn
oh
it!
yeah, of course I
Somebody
noticed.
Why did you watch this? Well, no, never mind.
Why are you devoting so much time to this loser?
It's an example of the lengths and services that I provide to other people.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
you
like
you
that
do
old-
provide. Go ahead, Matt.
That
Sorry.
old commercial, a man's got an obligation to his fans.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, and Pete, having thousands more fans than I do, has a greater obligation. But you know, you're helping out the eZine followers and fans and friends. We'll just say the eZine gang. It's easy. You know, those who are out there tempted to watch Winter Beast, now they know they don't have to do it.
No, they don't. They should, and they should.
So,
I did it for you.
okay. Well, I appreciate it.
You
Really?
should.
I do. I should, and I do.
Okay.
Matthew Lyons, welcome. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you guys for having me. It is a blast to be here and a huge honor. So I appreciate you guys inviting me on and just wanted to hang out and chat for a little while.
Yeah, it's
wait, huge honor. Okay, just checking.
I mean, come on, like-minded scumbags. No shade, but I mean, come on, game recognized game.
Our new slogan. Like-minded scumbags.
Yes. There you go.
Our new slogan. It's an honor for you to be here.
Yeah, that'll go over well. So you wrote a book called about a Black and Endless Sky. Could you kind of spoiler free tell the audience what the book is about?
Yeah, long story short, the way I've been pitching it is The Exorcist meets the Blues Brothers. My wife keeps telling me to not describe it that way because it's not entirely accurate, but it does the job. It's about two siblings, Jonah and Mel Talbot, who set off in the wake of Jonah's divorce to sort of make a cross-country road trip across the American Southwest from San Francisco to Albuquerque. But along the way,
mission from God?
They are kind of on a mission from God, kind of the other team. Along the way, they are waylaid by forces both supernatural and horribly, violently human.
Yeah, that bar fight, man. Jesus.
Oh, thank you. I worked really hard on that bar fight. That bar fight, I wanted it to feel bone crunching in as much as horror fiction can.
Oh yeah, I was picturing it, and I'm like, man, don't piss Jonah off.
He's got anger issues,
which is one of the protagonists, the brother.
And the siblings are both sort of keeping secrets from each other and kind of pretending that they aren't the people they always were, and just problems.
So like any other family, really.
Exactly. It's just like, well, we're gonna hang out with family. Yeah, I'm gonna get in a fight with somebody. Not really sure who, but it's gonna happen.
Do you have siblings?
I do. I have a little sister.
So basically, this book is based on.
Not so much, actually. The book is very much kind of two parts of myself that I had to kind of reconcile. And so I figured, what better way than to make them take a road trip together? Because that always works out super well. But I mean, my sister and I grew up.
It sure did in Near Dark.
Oh God! Oh man! Near Dark is a movie that does not get talked about nearly enough. Let's just be honest.
That's true.
And Catherine Bigelow.
Is that her? I don't remember the actress.
It's Catherine Bigelow who directed. I think so. I think she's sort of like David Cronenberg, where it's just like you started off in horror and then you sort of transitioned to serious art film. And I don't know. David Cronenberg's coming back. I think it's called Crimes of the Future, his next one.
Actually, that's one of the topics I was going to touch on. Here's the line from the article. David Cronenberg's new body horror movie will cause, quote, real panic attacks. Now, I'm not into body horror in the first place, but all power to him. I'm out, So
that's fair.
I'm sure Pete will watch it.
Dig it.
He also was in multiple episodes of Discovery.
In what?
Star Trek Discovery. He was a guest star in several episodes. He had a recurring.
Really?
Yeah, and he plays it really well.
Very fun part.
That's cool.
He actually his character made a joke in like one of the last two episodes of the last season for Discovery that referenced Gilligan's Island.
That's amazing. I love that. I also love that he's not the only kind of art house pseudo horror director to show up in modern sci-fi series. Wasn't Werner Herzog in The Mandalorian?
Yes,
I didn't watch it.
Yes, he was.
I mean, I'll watch anything with or by Werner Herzog. So,
have you seen the Michael? You said you watched this show. So first of all, you realize that we're interviewing you, and then we're meandering to another topic, and then we realize you're here, and we interview you some more.
That's so. I've seen the show. I know how this works. I'm good.
Have you seen the episode? And I actually made a clip of it, of Michael Sisko imitating Werner Herzog.
No, but that sounds incredible.
You know what? If somebody can find the link for me, otherwise I'll look for it later and I'll put it in the show notes.
Yes.
So let me make myself a note with my top shelf technology here.
Amazing.
Werner. See, what happened was Langan was here. John Langan was here,
Yeah.
and Cisco was here, and we were, all talking, interviewing, whatever it is we do. I'm still not sure. And at the end, John Langan's like, "Okay, so Michael Cisco, this is just off the cuff." He goes, "Do an imitation of Werner Herzog," and
what?
Cisco's like, "What?" He goes, are you serious?" or something like this. And Langan's like, "Yeah." So just extemporaneously, Michael Cisco did this. And it was pretty fucking funny. No, he did not. He had no idea. He's just a
John
genius.
Langan's just an anarchist.
Well,
just here you go.
That's not news.
I'm fair. I feel like everybody's got you could ask pretty much anybody to do like a Christopher Walken impression. You're going to get various shades of bad. But if you ask for a Herzog impression, it's either going to be like just hard refuse, or you're going to be able to stick the landing in such a way that makes you feel like Werner Herzog is on the call.
You know what this show needs more of, Matthew? More cowbell.
More cowbell. All right, yeah, I'm in.
I got a fever. And the only prescription is more cowbell.
It's still a great skit, damn it.
I can't watch. Yeah, I've watched it probably 25 times in my life. Speaking of Michael Cisco, I will find that link if somebody else doesn't, and post it in the show notes after the show. But I'm publishing a book of his called called Ethics. A novella about birds. It's if you know Cisco's writing or his work, it's genius. Like our friend Laird said, I gave him a copy to read and asked him if he would mind blurbing, and he said, "Of course, anything for Cisco." And he's like, he wrote on Twitter that we don't deserve Cisco, and we're almost there. I would say another week to two at the most, and then I'll be putting this out into the world.
That's amazing. It's very exciting.
Nick Gecko cover. Not to take away from your book. Let's get back to you.
No, it's cool.
So you're in New Orleans now? You don't live in New Orleans?
In New Orleans. I do not live in New Orleans. I'm currently on vacation in New Orleans. If you hear background noise, there's a block party outside. It's a whole thing. It's awesome. These days,
it's very slight. I can't really.
All right, cool. These days I make my home in my hometown of Denver. Moved back there in 2019, just before the end of the world, from New York, where my wife and I were for about 10 years.
Okay. And why are you at a convention?
No, just on vacation.
Okay, just on vacation.
Long vacation to sort of be in a town that I haven't been in since I was in my 20s, and I could drink a lot more and stay up much later than I can these days. Turns out the partier has left the building.
Yeah, I hear you. So before I even read this book, I was pretty excited about it. If I remember right,
thanks, man.
Somebody from your publishing company emailed me, made me aware of it, and I thought, yeah, this is right in our wheelhouse. And I read the synopsis and I thought, road trip, the desert, the bleakness of the desert. It's always a nice setting. Catriona Ward did it in her latest book, Sundial.
Sundial, yeah. I've heard nothing but amazing things about Sundial. I still need to
definitely. Yeah, we talked, and she was like, it's a great setting, and it's very isolating. A road trip and the supernatural, obviously, that's going to happen. That when you start reading the book, you just don't know what. I don't want to give anything away, and I know you don't. But what was the genesis of this book? What made you decide, okay, this is the story that I want to tell? You know, because this is your second book. I'll ask about your first book later, but yeah.
Yeah, of course. So it comes from a couple of different sources. I think the first one was, at least one of the biggest ones, was a road trip that I took right after I turned 21. I had an aunt who was living in San Francisco at the time, and she was working in the wine industry, as pretty much everybody who lives around Napa Valley does. And she wanted to teach me about wine. She failed. I know nothing about wine. Still, I know a fair bit about Scotch and horror movies, but wine, not so much. Sorry, Karen. But I flew out there and spent a couple of days just hitting wineries, and then we drove back. She split her time between Napa and Colorado, and the idea was for us to hit a couple wineries and take a road trip back and be back in time for school to start up again. I think it was over spring break.
Yeah.
And that road trip was fantastic. Like, there are just these empty stretches out in Nevada and Utah where you're not going to see people. They have like warning signs posted. They're just like, this is the last gas station for 300 miles.
Yeah,
Hope
you know,
don't
people who live in big cities or on the coast cities, or even, you know, like Dallas, New York, hell, even where I'm from, Des Moines, which is not a huge place. It's a mid-sized city, I would say.
Sure.
It's pretty easy to forget how huge America is and how much empty space is there, and how dangerous that can be if you're stuck out there. You know.
Right. And those empty spaces, man, I'm glad you mentioned that, just because that's something that's always been sort of like fascinating to me. Is how empty spaces are. Just desolation itself is such a prime setting for horror, because you just have yourself to rely on. And then when things go wrong, they go really fucking wrong. I know you guys had Ali Wilkes on the show a few weeks ago.
Oh yeah,
she was
great.
A story kind of about like just desolate spaces, right? So there's something kind of magical about those to, I don't know, explore as a writer. So the road trip with my aunt was one part, but as I kind of touched on, like another part was kind of reconciling these two halves of myself that I turned into these characters and just made them have their arguments. Like, okay, cool, you guys don't get along. Let's go on a road trip and sort your shit out like adults. But also, I'm not a religious person, but possession stories have always been super, super fascinating to me. And I wanted to write sort of a possession story from kind of an a-religious angle, because one of the things that's always, I don't want to say like bother me, but a fair amount of consternation has come from the fact that so many possession stories are told from an exceptionally, like a profoundly Catholic point of view. And that's not something that, even if I spent 6 months a year doing research, that's not a story that I can tell, but I can tell an a-religious story.
There actually is an interesting movie that came out called The Old Ways. If you haven't seen it, I think it's on Netflix. It's about an exorcism, but with Aztec religion.
Okay, all right.
Oh, right. I still need to watch that.
I dig that. I think the closest movie that I've seen that hits to sort of being a-religious is The Last Exorcism, which is found footage. And I know that that can be hit or miss with people. I think that when found footage is done right, it's done unbelievably well. And I think that The Last Exorcism is an example of how found footage done right can be super effective. And it's not exactly an a-religious movie. It's just that the main character happens to be sort of a preacher who has lost his faith. But yeah, I wanted to tell a story about a possession from that sort of place of like, well, we're not really religious, so, you know, exorcisms aren't exactly what you think they are. And again, no spoilers, but I kind of wanted to tell a story where an exorcist wasn't this moral paragon. That's the other kind of part that's been gestating in the back of my head for years at this point.
Yeah. Well, first of all, the movie that Matt Carpenter just recommended to you. So the complaints, I forgot to mention this before, one of the main complaints we get about this show complaints in quotes, because
Okay.
is that we always increase their TBR lists of
Amazing.
the audience, or because we mentioned all these books that we like and their movie lists. And I've been doing a new thing over the past 3 weeks. I just want to remind everybody that in addition to the guest, I've got in the show notes, I've got a TBR list for you, and I usually try to list 5 to 6 books to check out. Let's see. I've got Mr. Carney Horn by Michael Shea, The Gulp 2, and several others. But I mean, you're the star here. You're the main guest. But I wanted to remind everybody, read Matthew's book and then maybe go to his first book and then go to these. But so, one thing I really liked, let me grab the book here, was each chapter kind of unique. It starts with either the brother or the sister's name, whose viewpoint you're writing from in each chapter. And then the next line says what city and state they're in, and then how many miles to Albuquerque where they're driving. And it really helps to reinforce the fact that it's a road trip. Right. And then the one chapter where it says Jonah and then unknown, that's right. That's like, this is great. So
thanks, man. I was pretty proud of that. The mile marker thing was sort of a solution that I came up with early on in development of the book, because road trips are, I think road trip stories are best done in movies or TV, just because you can see the car moving, and like nobody wants to read a book where every chapter someone is describing the motion of the car. Like that gets tedious after a while, because there's a number of chapters we don't have to describe that the car is moving in great detail, but you want to be able to feel like there's motion, right? So being able to provide that like 1,342 mile, like 1,342 miles to Albuquerque, gave an opportunity to sort of circumvent that and let you know that like we're getting closer to where they want to go, but every time they get a little closer, there's setbacks and problems and shit that they cause, problems that they don't necessarily cause, but there's so many instances of them causing problems that they don't have to deal with. These are deeply flawed. As a couple of friends, like one of my friends has described it as a book where both the main characters are fuck ups, and I would die for them. Like, okay, I'll take that.
Yeah, that's great.
I don't take lovable fuck ups. I love lovable fuck ups. Who doesn't?
During the bar fight, there's a line I really liked where Jonah's punching somebody, if I remember correctly, and he punches him 3 times, and the line is this, regarding the punch: once, twice, 3 times a douchebag.
Thank you. Thanks, man. I'm pretty proud of that myself.
I love that.
It's 3 punches. I'm like, oh, I know the line that he's going to reference, and I'm really like, I'm a little. I try. You try not to be precious, but at the same time, that's something that I'm glad you dug it, because I'm really proud of it.
Well, it's just anytime you read something different that gets your attention, I think that's a good thing. For the in most cases.
Thanks, man.
So,
thank you,
guys.
I appreciate it.
I don't want to hog all the talking here. You guys have any questions for Matt Lyons, or you want me to continue doing all the hard work? Wow.
It's cool. It's fine. I can keep talking about like fun turns of phrase that I wrote.
Yes, Pete.
So you mentioned the importance of empty spaces in the road trip, and I think what you're getting at is just like not having to talk about the fact that the car is still moving. The empty space also means that you don't have to describe a lot of scenery.
Sure.
But it also leaves open for lots and lots of other things.
Oh yeah.
And that as a writer, I think it's interesting that these are the times when you can either do introspection or conversation.
Right.
And in both cases, that works really, really well to move the story forward.
I think so.
Where did you fall on that line?
I mean, it's a balance, right? Like
Yeah.
the biggest, and that was one of the biggest challenges of writing it. Like, I think the biggest challenges that I had writing Endless Sky was that we're issues of balance, right? It's a crime story. It's like kind of a thriller, but it's also a horror story. It's long stretches of driving through the desert, followed by like two siblings having just a snippy little shit fight over nothing, but it's not really nothing. And it's trying to figure out that introspection, those like long stretches where you're just like, cool, we're just going to be driving for another 4 hours and we're not really going to be talking about anything because we're related and we've been talking.
Right.
But introspection only goes so far. So it's about trying to break up. This sounds like this is a weird way to talk about your own book, but you try and break up the monotony. But
Right.
that's the truth of, that's what makes road trips themselves fun. So being able to kind of balance between like human threat, problems with a possession, and just the fact that these two siblings kind of hate each other half the time. It was almost an intuitive decision. It wasn't something that I tried to plan out that cadence. I just tried to go with what felt right, and tried to let the characters kind of tell the story. Because, like, you know, I mentioned, like, I based these two siblings on kind of parts of myself that are pretty important to me. And so I wanted to do them justice and let them tell the story, but not at the cost of the momentum of the actual story, the propulsion, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Yeah, it was just very much like what feels right in this moment.
Right. Have you seen a film called Road Games with Stacy Keach and Jamie Lee Curtis?
It's been a while, but yes, I worked at a video store right after high school, and it was one of the best jobs I ever had. So I just soaked up pretty much everything on VHS.
Yeah.
It was the best, worst job. It was a terrible job that I loved so much.
Right.
Just briefly for the audience, if Matt freezes up a little bit or there's a slight garble, it's catching up. It's not perfect, but it's understandable because he's on vacation and he's on his phone. I'm glad he came. So anyway, Pete, you were saying?
So Road Games strikes that balance of, you know, and doing that voiceover of introspection really hard when you're doing film, because it's like, do you really want to have that guy like talking to himself the whole time? So they give him a dog, and it's not a dog, it's a dingo. So half the film he's talking to his dog, half the time he's talking to Jamie Lee Curtis. So it doesn't make him look crazy until he doesn't have either one of them. You're right.
And then it's like, oh, you have gone full around the bend, or were you like this the whole time?
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, so that road trip introspection versus conversation really helps drive character development as well as moving the plot forward.
Yeah, it is like, it's like a pressure cooker for plot and character at the same time. I love road trip stories, man. They are kind of the best. To this day, I still love them.
Guys, what's the name, Pete and Rick, Matt, of the story of the movie where a brother and a sister are driving somewhere through the desert?
Creepers. In the desert?
Jeepers Creepers.
Jeepers Creepers.
Filmed in Florida.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you wouldn't know, but that is just a great and scary road trip.
Yes. Yeah, that first one still holds up. I think the director turned out to be a fucking creep. But
that's
the
right.
movie itself, like, that's one of those movies where it's hard to separate art from artist. I know we absolutely should, but at the same time, I don't want to give up on watching Jeepers Creepers because that first movie rules. Isn't that Justin Long who plays the brother?
Yep.
He's kind of a wormy little creep himself.
Yes.
Not in everything, just in that.
Yeah. But no,
I still watch Smallville, you know.
Fair.
But But Mike, you're right. It's a pressure cooker in the sense that you really only have about 36 square feet.
Right.
And you have to talk to the person you're with. And
now we lost Pete.
Oh no.
Peter's frozen.
Oh.
Because I'm here. Can you
There
hear
you
me?
go.
Oh, there you
There
are.
you go.
Hey,
So
there.
There you go.
So you're literally trapped in a very, very small room
Right.
with someone you're talking to. So if you can't like call them out on anything and then leave,
Yeah.
you can't, but at the same time, eventually you're going to stop for gas or whatever. And you're going to
Right.
get in the car and you're going to encounter somebody.
Oh, and they do.
And then you're just going to
They do.
unleash all your pent up frustrations.
Yes. That is very true.
That's in the early scene of the book. They
Yeah, that
definitely
happens
release
like
them.
page 50, where it's like, oh, neither of these siblings are okay. But
They
all right.
stop in, of course, at a fucking biker bar. Yeah, that's where you want to take your sister, to a biker bar. Yeah, good idea.
Some people have self-destructive streaks, Mike.
That's very true.
It's not self-destructive if you win. I mean,
Yeah, fair.
Not sure if they did or not. So let's see. Bob Pastorella wrote, when was this? A couple months ago, a nice little write-up of your book, Blackened in the Sky. He describes the book, skipping ahead, but after a weird accident at an abandoned industrial site in the desert, Nell, that's the sister, starts having strange visions and other horrifying symptoms. Something is happening to Nell. She's changing before Jonah's very eyes. Followed by a stranger who seems to know more about Nell's condition than they say, the siblings try to escape the desert and find a way to stop what's happening to Nell. But there are things even worse waiting for them in the desert. And for Jonah, one thing is chillingly clear. It's not only Nell in there anymore. And then he quotes a few things. I like this from Fred Venturini. Horror is at its best when hearts are broken alongside the things going bump in the night, and Matthew Lyons, A Black and Endless Sky, delivers. Prepare to be thrilled, touched, and scared shitless in the sprawling tale you'll wish was as endless as the ominous sky in the title. Now, for my Lovecraftian fans, of which there are many, cosmic horror fans, Richard Thomas writes, in A Black and in the Sky, Matthew Lyons has written a lush, unsettling, visceral story that is Lovecraftian and uncanny, yet touching and endearing. This is a powerful, immersive experience, which that last line to me is like, you have to read this book. If I knew nothing else about the book.
It was very kind of Richard to blurb the book.
Well, and Joe Lansdale told me last week, that when he's asked for a blurb, if he doesn't like the book, he doesn't say it sucks. He just doesn't blurb it. And I would imagine
that.
Yeah, I would imagine that, I'm kind of the same way, with reviews or promotion or whatever. And I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm sure these guys meant it, that they really, and they wanted people to understand that, hey, you really need to read this,
Yeah, it is. It seems that way. And it is just a massive honor to have like a number of like absurdly talented people blurb your book. I'm glad they dug it. It's a weird one, and it does kind of get into cosmic horror. It sort of turns a possession story into a cosmic horror story at a couple.
I gathered that from the prologue.
Yeah, it gets way wilder. When you look at the whole thing altogether, it's kind of a bonkers book, but I love it.
I love the prologue where they describe all these horrible things that start happening, in this, I guess, kind of Lovecraftian setting waiting to go to hell, and it does. And then after all these horrible things happen, your last line in that prologue is something like, and then everything went to hell, or something like that. In other words, then it got even worse.
Yeah. Like all of this was literally prologue.
Yeah. Right. This was nothing.
The things that you're not going to see. It's just like that rule of like the rule of nothing is scarier, right? Like I wanted to build up to like, it's getting scarier. And then like, you got to wait until, you got to wait until the later in the book.
You know, it's good. It's good because what it does is, and we were discussing this on the Patreon podcast, non-recorded hangout Friday night, in regards to horror stories, because one of my Patreons, Seth, he said he loves haunted house stories, and there are many, but he really likes ones that don't wait to the third act to really get scary, you know, and you know, where there was a couple, but he wanted to ask us if there were any more like that. I think we came up with a couple of possibilities, but my point is that you solve that right away. You've got this scary Lovecraftian cosmic horror, whatever you want to call it, action. You don't really know, but it's got that vibe right there in the prologue. And then you go to the brother and sister, and they're going to take a road trip. So, you know, it's far better than just starting, in my opinion, than just starting with the brother and sister going on the road trip.
Thanks,
you know,
man.
because as you go, you've got that in the back of your mind as you read.
Right.
You know,
that's been preset to be like, okay, so something is very wrong in the desert, and they're driving into the desert. What the fuck is wrong with these millennials? The
other thing is, I can't stress this enough. I love that desert setting. Not just during the day, but during the night of any story. You know, you got a clear night and you're out in the desert, and there's no light pollution, and it's wonderful.
It is. It's beautiful.
And I love astronomy, and it's just one of the things that, it's wonderful, and it's terrifying, and it's humbling, and it's, you know, inspiring at the same time, depending on what's going on, of course.
Totally. So my next book is actually set, I think, primarily in the desert. There's a place in Colorado. This is going to be the first time that I've written about my home state.
Thank you for setting another book in the desert for me. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's going to be awesome. It takes place in, I don't know if y'all have heard of this. It's called the San Luis Valley. It's southwestern Colorado. It is this big, empty. It's beautiful and stark and sunny and scary. I think that's where the first recorded livestock mutilations happened in North America. It's like the center of weird shit in Colorado. There's something like a dozen more active cults in the
center of weird shit. You writers in your technical terms.
I mean, you know, really, that's what I went to school for. The center of weird shit in Colorado.
I'm just kidding, man.
I know. But yeah, like the San Luis Valley is this, and I love it down there. I think it is such a beautiful landscape, and I just love being down there. So being able to set a story down there was really exciting. So yeah, it's another.
So you love road trip stories. This is not in my TBR, but I just thought of it. Have you read Douglas Clegg's The Attraction?
I have not.
Well, it's actually only if you're a Kindle person, anyone out there, it's only $4.99. Of course, you can order used copies for, I see the lowest price at $11.39. But I'm looking at Amazon. But I've read it probably 3 times. It's more of a novella than a novel. But it's set in the 70s. I'm reading this. Excuse me, I need it. My mouth's really dry. Some mysteries should remain buried. 5 college students, and bear in mind, again, this is the 70s, no cell phones, anything like that. 5 college students hit the road to travel cross country away from college pressure, Seeking fun and adventure, they pull over to a roadside gas station after they see signs along the desert highway that read, "Come see the mystery." That's all I'll say about that, except I will tell you that I've read the book 3 times. I just love it.
Sounds awesome. All right,
Yeah.
sold, done.
Yeah, Douglas Clegg, The Attraction. And when you get a chance to read it, Matt, all I ask in return is that you email me and tell me what you think.
You got it.
Since you love desert. Have you guys read this book? Pete, Matt, Rick?
Well,
Okay, it's really good. Yeah.
Nice.
It's not one of his more recent books. And I'm certainly not a Douglas Clegg expert, but I love that book. Anyway, yeah, check that out.
Thank you, man.
What else did I want to ask you? Anybody else want to throw some questions at Matt? Rick, do you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention something.
Sure.
All right.
You mentioned, Matt, that you started out in a video store. That's also where Quentin Tarantino started out. So you're in good company.
That is, I have heard that.
So, do you have something, Pete? I'm sorry.
So there's Matt. I'm gonna fall back on Matt Carpenter's questions. So when did you discover Lovecraft and cosmic horror and decide that was something you wanted to look at?
I think I must have discovered Lovecraft back in high school. I must have been I had to have been 15. And I think it was the statement of Charles Dexter Ward. It was the one that really haunted me. Just something about the going into a grave that's really just a door and having this one communication to whoever's going down into the grave. That still haunts me. That last line, "You fool, he's dead." My God.
That's Statement Randolph Carter.
Yeah, Statement Randolph.
Randolph Carter. It's not Charles Dexter Ward.
You were 15.
That's fair. It's been a minute, but that story to this day, that's one of the all-time greats, just because that sort of showed me what the unknown and what the unseen can do. But
and you don't know who's saying it. You don't know what's saying it.
We don't know who this or what this person with the voice is on the other end of the line. It's not your friend anymore. But honestly, one of my favorite cosmic horror stories isn't by someone who I think we would consider cosmic horror at all. It's Arthur C. Clarke. It's The 9 Billion Names of God, which I think is a perfect cosmic horror story that doesn't show its hand until the last possible second. That story scared the absolute shit out of me when I was a kid. And
I think Pete could probably comment about that one.
Yeah, that's a great story, because it's really about process, right?
Right.
And belief, and not understanding what the people you're working for believe in.
Yeah.
And
oh man.
And do we accept this idea that they are this is a religion, or are we just going to say, it's just a job, and get on with it? Because it has devastating consequences.
Yes, it does.
But no, Arthur C. Clarke, first of all, Arthur C. Clarke is a Lovecraftian. He wrote this great comedy called At the Molehills of Murkiness, or something like that?
Mountains of Murkiness.
Mountains of Murkiness.
As
a parody of At the Mountains of Madness. And then Childhood End is horrifically Lovecraftian.
Oh man, I love that book.
Yeah, so and then he's got all these little stories, like The Sentinel, which becomes the basis for 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Right.
They're just chock full of cosmic horror, somewhere between Lovecraft and Olaf Stapleton. he's running the gamut between horror, cosmic horror, and cosmicism,
Right.
and delving into each liberally. But so that is a great story to bring up.
I mean, it is the first sci-fi story that ever scared the living fuck out of me. Truly, like to this day, still scares the shit out of me because it's so expertly constructed and realized. There's not a wasted word. It's on a craft level. It's absurdly good, but in terms of like, this is a horror story that you don't know is a horror story until the last sentence. Like, there are so few horror stories that can pull that shit off and do it well and like stick the landing, right?
Man was insanely talented.
Oh,
Okay,
a legend for a reason.
I hesitate to ruin this for you.
All right.
I'm looking for your eject button.
I put a link in the chat bar about a little video movie you need to watch about that story.
Okay.
Which chat box? The public one or the?
Well, I put it in the YouTube, but also put it in our private side chat here.
Okay, so everybody has it.
Right.
Sweet.
Okay. So
If you're watching on YouTube, anyway.
So I got a couple other questions. Okay, so
all right,
you've sort of now, compared to us geezers, you're still a whippersnapper. You've sort of implied that, I can't, stay up late like I used to. But okay, so you've written what?
He looks like he's about 30.
36, but thank you.
Oh, you poor kid.
Oh God.
Wow.
So how did you get into writing? Like, what is that your day job, or were you always writing stories? What, in college, were you a writer? What was the deal?
So I've always been a writer. I think this is, I don't know how uncommon this is. I don't think it's a very uncommon thing. Like, I've been wanting to tell stories before the point that I could write. So I would basically, when I was a kid, force someone, whatever grown up was closest to me, I would dictate stories and they would write them down on like these pads that we had in my grandma's house. And that was where I started. Hey,
Grandma, let me tell you about the monster that's hiding behind the couch. I'm going to describe him.
Exactly. Pretty much exactly that. And Grandma was not a horror fan, but I always wanted to tell stories. So, started there, and it kind of just kept going on through college.
And was she and your family supportive of that part of you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. They've always been very supportive, wonderful. If not, like, some of them have understood it more than others. Mm-hmm. But they've always understood that it's like this huge part of who I've always been, and just telling stories is a thing that I love and probably will love for the rest of my life.
You got to be, it's a cliche, but you have to be true to yourself.
Yeah, it's really true. Do. I mean, what's that quote? Writers don't retire, they just die. Like, yeah. Kind of.
How many times has Stephen King retired?
I mean, fair. So that's kind of where it started.
Yeah, sorry. Before Matt asks his next question, I think he had another one. I have to tell you, Matthew Lyons, I'm a little disappointed because I've been watching the side chat here. And what's your wife's first name, if you don't mind me asking?
Her name's Chelsea, and
I don't see any embarrassing secrets from here by Chelsea.
I mean, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I don't need her help to embarrass myself.
Well,
I do.
All kidding aside, it sounds like she's probably very supporting of you. So
Matthew Lyons, I have been married 5 times.
Okay.
That doesn't make you an expert on women.
No, but it makes me an expert on being embarrassed by women.
And what pisses off women.
Yes. I know you may think you're an expert at embarrassing yourself.
Oh, no.
But trust me.
Give it time.
Your
Not
wife.
That you're going to get divorced, but.
Your wife will always be able to embarrass you to a much more professional extent than you will ever be able to.
And your child, I mean, both of my wife and my son, every time I tell a joke, they say it's not funny. And look, I know it's funny empirically, but no. Yeah. I hope my son's not listening because he's going to pipe in. Matt, did you have another question?
Okay.
Yeah.
So are you a full-time writer now, or is this like still like, it's not any kind of value judgment. I'm like, who's that guy? Is it Chambers? Who's the guy we talk to sometimes? He's a pretty well-established author, and he works as a barista at Starbucks.
That's amazing.
With insurance.
Yeah, James Chambers, is that right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or is
So
it James
I was
Moore?
wondering, like,
James Moore.
James Moore, right.
is this something you get to do full-time now, or what's going on?
The way that I often describe it is I have 2 full-time jobs. I have the writing fiction, but because I've been wanting to use words, I've basically been a word nerd ever since I was a tiny little kid. I have a day job as well. I work as a copywriter for a tech company based in Seattle. And that's sort of how I pay the bills. And yeah, health insurance.
Do you get to work from home then?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's wonderful.
I have a home office that I have decked out to the nines that I have to keep blurred when I'm there on work meetings, because no one needs to see like the ghastly art that I've hung in my office to inspire the books while they're like trying to have a 9 a.m. Tuesday. Like, I can't stop staring at the open mouth that won't stop screaming. Matt, please turn just the blur on a little bit. This is right. This is the peril of being a horror writer with a day job.
Yeah, and don't take your phone to the restroom, or if you do, hit the mute button. We've seen those horror stories.
I mean, God.
Yeah, this is not a good move.
Over the course of 2 years, you'd think that people would know how to.
Hey, guys, we were using Zoom on this show before it was popular. We were cool before it was cool.
You guys did it before it was cool.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks to Benjamin Handelman. Actually, speaking of working from home and speaking of being true to yourself and doing what you love, Matthew. I was talking to my son last night about this. We had a great conversation, and one of the things I said was, you and I both have challenges that I said everybody has challenges. They're different.
Sure.
But I said, you and I have some challenges that other people don't have. But the world's not going to give you a bonus point for it. You have to, the world itself doesn't care. You just have to go for your goals. Or, he absolutely understands that. I wasn't, lecturing him. It was a nice conversation. And I said, remember I said this, Logan, when I'm gone or 10 years from now, or just whenever, all the time, don't settle for less than an extraordinary life.
Good advice.
Yeah. And I said, from the outside, I said, I made that decision, and I know others have too. I'm not unique. I made that decision many, many years ago that I was not going to settle for an ordinary life. I wasn't going to settle for anything less than extraordinary. And I said, Logan, to an outsider, it may look like, okay, here's a 50-year-old old man who can't find his glasses half the time, and has got gray hair, and lives in an apartment, not a mansion. And, it may not seem like an extraordinary life, but I get up every morning, I get to do what I want to do. Thanks to my patrons and to the eZine gang, and to various small advertisers, wish I had more, but hopefully that'll change. But my point is, it may not look that way from the outside, but to me, it is. And he actually interrupted me mid-sentence and said, Dad, you work at your career doing something that you love, and you work in your pajamas. That is extraordinary. And I was like, yeah, that made me just, coming from your son, that's great. But, that's what I mean. Extraordinary doesn't mean that you're Tom Cruise. It means that you're doing, you're not settling for less. You're doing what you want to do with your life, and
know what you're about, right?
Yeah. And I this is the first time I've met you, and, I don't want to, do a dad lecture or sound condescending, but every writer that comes on here that's doing that, I'm proud of them for doing it. You know?
Thanks, man. I'm proud of myself for doing it. It's hard. One full-time job these days sucks. 2 is real hard. 2
And,
is
you
a
know,
lot.
and I believe that of everybody on this podcast, and you know, for different reasons. And there's a lot of others out there. And, you know, I think it was F. Scott Fitzgerald. Actually, I've got the quote right up here. For what it's worth, it's never too late. You know, no matter how old you are, for what it's worth, it's never too late to be whoever you want to be. I hope you're living a life that you're proud of. And if you find that you're not, I hope that you have the strength to start over. I just love that quote.
I love the hell out of it. That's real good.
Yeah, I love it too.
It reminds me of one piece of trivia and one quote that I love. I'll go with the quote first because it's short. Find what you love and let it kill you. Like, yeah, no, I mean, come on, that's the writing life in one, right? You got it. But the other thing is like Raymond Chandler didn't start writing until he was in his 50s. Like Raymond fucking Chandler didn't start writing until he's just like, try this shit out.
That's not something that anyone remembers unless you look it up, you know, and you know.
Right.
It's never too late. You can be 80 and decide, I want to do this. Do it.
That's true.
You know,
run your race.
You know, it's not the thing that I love about this quote is it's not there are no value judgments. There's no sense of shame. He's saying if you do find that you're not living a life that you're proud of, if you do find that, you know, I really hope that you have the strength to start over. So then there's no value judgment there at all.
Yeah. It's nothing prescriptive. It's just allowing people to define what success and what personal and professional satisfaction means to them. And that's kind of the weird part of the conversation that I find myself often having, because I have friends who are like, would you give up your day job to just do writing full time? And like, if I could make that work, of course, that would be incredible. But
insurance is nice.
I mean, insurance kicks ass. Good Lord. But at the same time, I kind of love my day job as a copywriter. It's using words in a completely different way than like fiction writing sort of enables me to. So that's cool. And also it keeps me talking to people so I don't go completely fucking feral in my home office.
Good point. Well, I got a comment on on the live show now. If you're listening later in your car on Spotify or whatever, this is not something you're going to see. But first of all, Andreas says, Zoom use before everybody else was using it is hardly a surprise when you consider this group's age. So I think we were just dissed. But that's okay, man. I love you.
Fired, I think, gentlemen.
Every time I do a virtual event like this every Sunday or Thursday, whatever, he's always there promoting it. So if he wants to make fun of my age, you're more than welcome, Andreas. And this, Kim, this is totally unexpected. Kim Smelter says, my life certainly has been extraordinary in no small part thanks to the Lovecraft eZine. So really, thank you, Kim.
I mean, you guys do good work. There's no wrong.
Thanks. I don't do it alone, you know.
So
it's true.
Yeah. Tell us about your first book.
Yes, please.
Okay. So the first book,
now that we've gotten through the inspirational part of the podcast.
Hell yeah, now we can get back to just kind of being dirtbags. So my first book's called The Night Will Find Us. I'm going to continue.
Dare you, sir?
Well, I'm going to use some movie comparisons because I feel like that's an easy way to sort of tell people what it's about.
Sure. What's the title?
Black and Endless Sky. It's called The Night Will Find Us. So Black and Endless Sky is the Blues Brothers meets The Exorcist. The Night Will Find Us is Blair Witch meets The Breakfast Club.
Okay.
It is the story of 7 friends in New Jersey And New Jersey gets a bad rap. I will die on that hill.
You know what,
for
Matt?
free.
If these books ever get turned into movies, you're going to have no problem boiling these plots down for
True.
producers, because
My
you're going to just
elevator pitch is like,
yeah,
this.
you're going to be like, look, this is what this is, you know, and 5 seconds later they go, sounds interesting. Anyway,
I
go
mean,
on.
that's part of the peril of like starting to become who I turned into in a video store in the year 2004. Like I was just inhaling movies at that point.
Sure.
So The Night Will Find Us is a story about 7 friends in New Jersey who, on the eve of their senior year of high school, head out to the Pine Barrens and run into something that may not want them to leave, but it also kind of hates them.
Pine Barrens, man.
In the Pine Barrens. The Pine Barrens is a great setting. I love the Pine Barrens. So New Jersey in general gets a bad rap. The Pine Barrens should not exist because it's a 1 million square acre forest in the middle of New Jersey, and everybody just acts like this is normal.
Right.
It's like highways, Newark, Hoboken, Jersey City, the Pine Barrens. It's so good, and it's so scary. It's a scary goddamn place,
and there's people who live in there.
Yeah, Paul Wilson wrote a great story about it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I love it. I think like there are ghost towns, there are abandoned settlements, there's just wrecked cars that, like, how did someone drive like an old Plymouth deep
All
into the
kinds
heart
of
of the Pine Barrens?
mysteries.
There's
Have you been there?
right, and I love it.
Have you been there?
The Pine Barrens, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so I grew up in Philadelphia. And
nice, awesome.
Okay.
Philly's great.
And
before he retired to Florida.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. I'm not that old.
The shade of it all, Jesus, guys.
But my grandmother would go to the Pine Barrens to buy box turtles.
Oh wow!
And she would release box turtles into her yard and her basement, and they would eat the slugs, so that she wouldn't have a slug problem.
Yeah.
But the guy she bought them from barely spoke English. He spoke this bastardized German, because he was descended from Hessians.
Okay, all right.
Oh wow.
Who had escaped to hide in the Pine Barrens.
That's wild, and I love it very much.
But he's literally like, an hour from Philadelphia, an hour from Newark, an hour from New York.
Yep.
And he doesn't speak English.
That's fantastic.
And it really freaked me out when I was a kid. It's just like,
absolutely.
There's a couple places like that, though,
Yeah.
Like, for example, in Georgia, the dialect is fading now, but there's the Gullah dialect.
Right.
What I'm talking about. And in Louisiana, I've been in parts of like the Deep Bayou where they don't speak English. They speak they speak Cajun French, which is not the same as French, because, like, for example, we for yes is wet.
Right.
So the pronunciation is different. There are places up in Maine where they only speak the Acadian French and they have no truck with outsiders. And what's the language? They kind of speak a bastardized Dutch in the Amish, right?
Right.
Privately. So there you can find these insular little communities you wouldn't think existed, even here in the States today.
Yep.
Actually, that makes me think of a book I recently read by Luke Smitherd called You See the Monster. I highly recommend it.
Oh,
I think I put it on the TBR a couple of weeks back.
Sweet.
So, yeah.
I think that goes to kind of what we're talking about before about isolated spaces, right? Like, things get sort of spooky and weird when there aren't like other people around to sort of, I don't know, reinforce society. Once that's sort of removed, it's like, okay, so things are going to get really fucking weird really fast.
Yeah,
great.
Laird, I'm going to badly paraphrase this, but
All right.
Laird, grew up in Alaska, and he says something along the lines of, when you're alone out there for a while, you get this real sense that something, the land, whatever, does not want you there. You know,
I love that. I love that so much.
Yeah, I do too. I love to hear him talk about that.
I mean, I will listen to Laird Durham talk about anything. The dude can write no wrong.
Well,
that sounds weird, but you know, WRITE, not all right. You know what I mean?
Well, not to be a used car salesman, but of course I've had him on the show numerous times, and you can watch those.
Well, yeah.
But I've got a Patreon podcast with him. It's $5 a month. You know, we were talking on the phone a couple of months ago, and I don't know how we got on the subject, but we started talking about strange and creepy but true things that have happened to us. So he started telling me some of his, and I was like, the hairs were starting to stand up on the back of my neck. And I said, you know what, this would be a really good bonus for the Patreons if you and I had a conversation about all this on a Patreon podcast, which is basically just like this, audio or video, but it's for the Patreons. And he's like, yeah, let's do it. And I'm not going to ruin any of the stories, but man, there are some creepy things that have happened. And in his words, you know, like more than one of them, if the explanation is paranormal, it's scary as hell. If the explanation to what happened here is not paranormal, it's still scary as hell, because you've got some
awesome
person that is completely fucking insane, and you're in their crosshairs. So I guess that's all I can say without giving away, but it's a great listen. It really is.
I'm gonna listen to that.
So what horror movies or anything have you and books have you read lately and watched lately that you'd like to tell us about? Who are you reading right now?
I mean, there's so much stuff that, like, I'm sure. I mean, I will never not go back to The Fisherman by Langan, just because it's a perfect novel in and of itself. Like, that's one of my all times. Negative Space by B.R. Yeager is fucking weird and fantastic and absurd and obscene and horrifying. It's fantastic. It's really good.
Negative Space.
What else have I been reading?
I don't think I've read that one.
Negative Space by B.R. Yeager.
I'll look that up.
I think you'll dig it. It's a little. It gets a little. It kind of exists at that weird like inflection point between horror and bizarro. But it's fantastic. Good Neighbors by Sarah Langan, obviously another genius. What else have I been reading? I recently reread The Orange Eats Creeps by Grace Krilanovich, which, if you guys haven't read that one, that's off the charts wild. It's like a fever dream in 150 pages in a really great way. It's kind of about
the title again.
Vampire. It's called The Orange Eats Creeps.
Okay. The Orange Eats Creeps. Okay.
Yeah, by Grace Krilanovich. I think it was published like 12 years ago, but it's like old moonshine that was like buried in the yard and forgot. It's still potent, and it might make you go blind. It's fantastic. In terms of stuff I've been watching, I've been telling Eddie and all of my friends who will listen to watch this movie Hellbender. It was done by the Addams Family, not that Addams Family. They're a small, like, it's like a mom, dad, and two daughters who basically decided to just start making movies in and around upstate New York.
And is there a llama in the movie by chance?
I don't believe there's a llama in the movie.
There is no llama in the movie, but I have seen this film.
Have you seen it? Okay, so
what are your thoughts, Pete?
You're right. It's like two people just got together and decided to make movies.
Yeah.
However,
I love it.
It's
a disagreement.
It's not a bad film. I'm not sure it's a good film, but it's not a bad film. There are some very interesting pieces. I think it has some pacing issues, but there are some very terrifying scenes.
Yeah, there's for what it was and under the circumstances it was made under, it's Citizen Kane, basically, for four people basically making it in the woods on a road trip across America from like upstate New York to Washington State over the course of a year. It's astonishing. And they have, it's like it's kind of punk. There's a whole thing with like the characters in the movie have a band, and the movie starts off with them just playing, and you think, okay, this is gonna, I don't know how I feel about this, but by the end of the movie, the band kind of grows on you. You're like, please play more songs. I've been watching that. They also did another horror movie before that called The Deeper You Dig, which is, it starts off like a thriller, and you think it's just going to be a thriller until ghosts, but it's fucking great. And it has one of my favorite shots in any movie ever in that movie. It's fantastic. So the Addams Family are like my new favorite indie darlings.
The band it creates a sort of strange counterpoint because, oh, they're a band and they're rehearsing and she wrote new songs, and yet they don't go and play them anywhere. And
it's so fun.
That is like, oh, wait, why don't they? Oh,
right. Why don't they go to town and play their songs for people, just for themselves? Weird.
Yeah, why do they do that?
It's so fun. Like, it's masterful for basically being a 6-person production.
Yeah.
Like, they basically turned over cinematography to one of the stars of the movie, their daughter Zelda, who decided to just like invest in a drone, and then they come up with these incredible shots that like no one who's just making movies with drone shots, it's so much better than it has any right to be. And I will tell everybody who will listen how good this movie is. I know it's not perfect, and pacing issues, but if you can forgive the flaws that come with it, there's something fucking magic there.
So we talked about Winter Beast earlier, and this is a bad movie that has no redeeming qualities whatsoever.
Okay.
And then there's Hellbender, which is this labor of love that in many ways, I just rewatched Evil Dead. Nice. You can see, given time and money and practice, that there is an artist who's going to develop here.
Absolutely.
That, whether it be Cronenberg or Carpenter, or you go back and you look at those old movies and you say, okay, I can see where this is, how this became this.
Exactly, man. Like,
and with Hellbender, I think, in the Addams Family, I think what you're seeing is this is someone starting out who has some skill already and is going to use it.
Yeah, I hope that, like, when I first saw Hellbender, I had this feeling, when you discover like a new artist and you kind of figure out like, please don't let them fuck it up. Please don't fuck it up, guys. Just give them a little bit more money every time. And let them develop at the pace that they're meant to.
Right.
Movies, like, especially horror movies by the Addams Family, are very much like that, where like they didn't start off in horror, and a lot of people didn't start off in horror. That's fine. But with horror, they kind of found what they're good at and where their skills are best applied. And I just can't, like, their next one is a period piece. I think it takes place in the Old West. It's going to be bonkers, and I can't fucking wait. It's going to be so good.
I'm what you're saying is, it reminds me of that film, The Chronicle.
Yes. Okay, exactly.
And then the guy that's like, "Oh my God, this is a great superhero film. It's your first production. Hey, will you direct Fantastic Four?"
God. No.
Yeah.
And
that's the worst thing that happens to indie horror, especially indie horror directors, is they get asked to film Marvel movies. Like, just let them make the art that they want to make, rather than like, what's that line from The Simpsons? They drove a dump truck of money up to my house. I'm just a man. I'm not made of stone.
I've used that line.
Damn right.
It's Krusty the Clown.
It's Krusty. It's 100%. Of course, it's Krusty.
It's like, yeah.
So the name of the book is A Black and Endless Sky. by Matthew Lyons. And it's available now if you want to read it as soon as you're done listening to this. And, you know, you're on Kindle, you certainly can do that. Is it on Audible, Matt?
It is on Audible. Actually,
Okay.
there are 5 different narrators for the book, which is wild, but they all did just a fucking stellar job. And I'm just baffled at how good it
That's
sounds
really
coming from
great.
these 5 narrators' mouths.
That's actually really great, having read the book. Yeah, I'm glad they did it that way.
Me too.
That's good.
It really differentiates the characters, and like, again, no spoilers, but like the antagonists kind of get their chapters, and being able to hear those voices and just how intensely scary they are without, like, I didn't plan for them to read this that scary, but like, okay, they're frightening people. That's fun.
I think that it's being realized more and more that you don't have to have just one narrator for a book.
Right.
A good example from, you know, I don't know, 12 or 13 years ago is Stephen King's novella In. There's 3 different narrators there.
I
So,
love that.
and it's this added dimension. Yeah, I love that story.
Yeah.
Really do. Okay, so Matt, thank you so much for being on the show. To the audience, please go read this book. It's really, really good.
Thanks, man. Thank you guys for having me here. This is,
of course,
it's an honor and a blast. This is fantastic.
Well, I got a couple other things. You're free to leave, or if you want to stick around, or if you want to go be with your wife, that's fine too.
I'll take it for a minute.
Did anybody watch the first 2 episodes of Outer Range?
I'm watching the second one tonight. I watched the first episode. I, honest to God, have no clue. I have a little bit of an idea what's happening, but it is so tense and at the same time so out there. It's really kind of hard to describe.
Yeah.
I like that. I feel like I saw somebody say that, like,
it's super well acted.
Outer Range, like, man, the new season of Yellowstone looks real fucking weird.
Yeah,
I can't wait for it. That's one of the things that I'm going to watch when I get home.
That's how I tried to get my wife, because she loves Yellowstone. I was like, "There's a new show. It's sort of like Yellowstone." She's like, are you putting me on? I'm like, no, you know, it's like Yellowstone. Yeah, it is, but it isn't. And so then about 45 minutes in, she's like, you know what? I'll be in the other room watching TV.
No.
I'm like, okay. She's not into horror.
But it got more and more tense, and it wasn't like, so far, it's not like the horror is cosmic horror. It's just human situation horror with something very weird happening.
Right.
I like that.
I think it was Kevin Joyner.
Well.
I think it was Kevin Joyner that said in our private eZine panelist chat that the producers and directors of From could take a lesson from the guys running Outer Range, because
awesome.
I really wanted to like From, but it's just pacing is just terrible. So here's the other one. You guys are watching Severance, right?
Yeah,
I want to, but I don't have Apple TV.
Y'all need to. I will give you guys my login. It's cool. It's that good. Like that. So you asked what I was watching. Like that was the other thing. It's like, okay, so this, but also Severance is. I can't tell if it's a satire, a thriller, or a horror story, or all 3. It's so good.
Yeah, I'm on episode 5 right now. I know King tweeted that the finale was great. So
yeah,
that's nice to know.
It does a really good job of like giving you payoff while setting up just a whole lot of other problems that they will then have to deal with. It's up there with like Yellow Jackets in terms of like modern TV that it is going to be legendary. Like this is stuff that we're going to look back on in 5 years. It's just like, how did we have this embarrassment of riches?
Yeah, and there's some existential horror there. Yeah. You know, I don't want to give anything away, but when, let's just say, an Audi says to an innie, "You are not a person. I am a person."
That moment, man.
Yeah,
Oh God, it's like it's almost like it's not Crash, but it is very much just like David Cronenberg's like ex J.G. Ballard. Like it's that same sort of like level of existential dread, which is like, yeah, just like, isn't life a dehumanizing nightmare? How can we make it worse?
Yeah, and for the versions of the characters that work there, all intents and purposes, from their point of view, they never leave.
They never leave. That's a horrible moment when you realize
they stand. They go into the elevator, which is where the change happens. Really, you hear this weird sound, and then suddenly they're in new clothes. The elevator is opening up again, and they're walking out to go back to work again.
That's hell. That hell to me.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I keep thinking watching this show.
Yeah, we are watching.
This is one of the rings of hell.
Yeah.
Anyway, Matt, thank you so much for being here. Really enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you guys for having me. This is fantastic. Truly, thanks for letting me like geek out about movies and talk about my book, but also just talk about good horror in general. It's an honor. So thank you guys.
Oh, thank you. Glad to have you. Do we need to discuss anything else before we take off, guys? Besides the prize?
Yes.
We can keep talking about Severance.
We have.
I don't want to give anything away.
This is a scholarly book, not fiction. It's Robert H. Waugh's essays, A Monster of Voices, or this is the 2011 edition. It's still quite good. If you want to win it, send an email to ezineprizes@gmail.com and put monster in the subject heading. We usually draw a winner like 6 weeks from the show.
Pete, Kickstarter?
Oh, yeah. I wasn't even thinking about it. Thank you, Matt. So
my name's Mike, but yeah.
Yeah, I know. Look.
Yeah, whatever.
I'll be absolutely honest with you here. I have been drinking since 11 o'clock this morning.
I'm on 4 hours of sleep, so.
It started with mimosas, and then yeah. Anyway, Kickstarter. Golden Goblin Press, Oscar Rios has been got another Kickstarter out now called Horror Holidays, and it is Cthulhu Mythos stories set on vacation. And
that sounds amazing.
It's fun. I had a lot of fun. I haven't read all the other stories, but because it's not funded yet. But
sure.
I had a lot of fun. My friend Sal Ciano and I wrote a story set at a beach house where the parents are fighting and the kids are left to go play with the other kids up the beach. And
mayhem.
Yeah, well, it's just like it. And this is something that I did. It was done to me as a kid. It's like you go to the beach and you're let loose, and it's like as long as your parents can see you, you're okay. But on the beach, that might be a mile away, and you have no idea what's going on and who they're talking to, and and it's kind of assumed. It's this great kind of idea that if you're at the beach with your parents, then the parents who have brought their other kids are like your parents, because you both chose the same vacation, therefore you must have the same mindset.
Yeah, or it could be a night ocean situation and you don't know it.
Exactly. Exactly. So anyway,
so how can people find this Kickstarter? Google what?
Google Horror Holidays Kickstarter.
Okay.
Right. And if not, go to my Facebook page and look for the link.
Pete Rollick is on Facebook. Peter under Peter Rollick.
Yes.
So, all right. Anything else, guys? I'm going to eat and crash, sleep for 14 hours, I hope.
Yeah,
Nice.
do
Sounds
that.
like a great plan.
Matt,
Good night.
you're,
No,
you're done? Okay. All right. Thank you again, Matt, for being here. And,
Thanks, guys.
please
Welcome.
enjoy the rest of your vacation. And
Absolutely.
Rick and Pete and Matt Carpenter, as always, thank you for being here to support me. So we'll see everybody next week. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Night, everybody.